Hey, ladies and gents, and welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 142. As always, or at least this week, we're joined by Dom.
Winter is here, you guys. It's here, and it's cold. Winter, yeah.
And
C-.
Jordan. C-. And Jordan.
Dom, I'd have to disagree with you because we're headed towards the summer months, which means that I've got a Leinenkugel's Summer Shandy.
You went that route, huh? Summer Shandy.
Leinenkugel.
Ah, delicious.
One of those.
Leinenkugel, my favorite pasta.
Bro, if you talk shit about the Summer Shandy or the Grapefruit Shandy or any of the various Leinenkugel Shandies, we're going to have lots of issues.
I will never besmirch the name of what is it? Leinenschmugel?
Leinenkugel Shandies.
Leinenkugel Shandies. I'll never do it.
Grapefruit is very good. I'll definitely get you there. Yeah. Summer Shandy's good. It's better when you're on a boat.
That's what I'm saying is like I'm getting into that vibe. You know, I'm getting into the summer vibe a little early here.
I could see you sitting on a nice boat, just chilling in a muscle shirt, drinking nice shanty, just, you know, observing the waves.
I'm all about those muscle shirts, boy.
All about it. Got to show the guns. Got to send out those invites for the gun show. Dom, you weren't here last week, so you want to start us off letting us know what you've been playing the last couple of weeks?
Just one thing. Just one thing. Sekiro. And Jared, let me tell you. Our boy Genichiro.
Have you passed him?
Oh, no. This mother...
Can I give you a tip? Can I give you a tip? Jared's tips and tricks.
Let's do it.
So, Jordan, plug your ears. Or I don't know. It's not too spoilery. Because it's just.
You know what? Fuck it.
Yeah, it's combat tips and tricks.
Here, I'll just turn the volume down on my headphones for the next 15 seconds. I'm gonna count to 15. Okay.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
So Dom, the first two phases are obviously just about deflecting and attacking, right, and getting his stamina bar down or his posture bar down. Have you made it to this third stage?
Yeah, I actually just did not long ago. But
really
quickly, his attacks are so fast in the third stage. But what I struggle with,
and I'm back.
We got past the spoiler stuff about the actual
perfect
parts of the fight.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Dom.
So the part I struggle with throughout the first 2 through 4, blah blah blah. The part I struggle with, I almost.
You just talk about straight combat. It's fine. Just that's fine.
I forget what they're called, but you know when the big symbol comes on the screen and like they're
perilous attacks.
Perilous, that's the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I struggle with those for him because he has like 3 different kinds. And obviously the thrust you want to counter, but I struggle with identifying the thrust versus the the slash and then the grab. Like that's what screws me up. And by the end of something, I am all out of health and all out of heals. So then I'm screwed by the time
you don't have to
thing
tiptoe
towards the
too
end
much.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're talking, the only thing I want to avoid spoilers with is like the culmination of the fight, right, Dom? That's like the big spoiler thing. All the other stuff is just basic combat. So what I found, because I struggle with him too, the current boss I'm at is the hardest boss. He's easily number 2. And it's not even because I don't think his combat's difficult. It's the journey of the fight. So the Makiri counter, people say like, oh, get really good at the Makiri counter and he's cake. I'm with you. I struggled finding the difference between his like thrust attack and his sweeping. Yeah. So exactly. I just avoid them at all costs. So no matter if it's a thrust or a sweep, I just try to get the hell out of dodge.
Yeah, try that.
And it's just about repetition with him. I mean, you've played From games, just learning his movements. What I learned with him is because obviously when you play From bosses, it's finding out like what distance is best for you to like stay at. And for the third phase of the fight, you want to stay as close as possible. And that was something that was hard for me because the way he moves makes you feel as if you just want to keep your distance all the time. That's actually contrary to the best strategy for him. So you actually want to be like super tight on him and deflect. And when the attacks come up that are the different attacks in the boss fight, you actually want to roll behind him. They do this thing where they teach you how to counter that move right before you enter that boss fight of like pressing RB before you hit the ground or something. That doesn't work for me. What I found is if you just roll behind him when he does that attack, you get like 3 or 4 good slashes on him, you get ample damage, and you're good to go. And he literally doesn't fight any different in that third stage as the first two. It's just that extra thing gets you scared. Like, it got me, I was worried. I was like, oh God, what is this? But if you actually just keep like tight as hell on him, like kissing his body as you like circle him that close, like
kissing
up tight
his body as you circle him.
Yes, it's majestic.
It's weird. So there's definitely like 2 different ways that I found you can fight a lot of these bosses. A lot of people, like, I've been watching some like tutorials and stuff, and a lot of people seem to recommend like get as aggressive as possible, counter everything, and just get their posture up, or break down their posture as fast as possible. Yeah. And then, just get your death blows and you're in and out, and a quick-ass fight, right? The other option that I found actually pretty effective, too, so, like, the first time I fought Genichiro, I made it all the way to that third phase purely taking down his health. Yeah. And I only got to the death blows through taking his health down, not even really through the posture. I mean, the posture eventually comes as a result of taking his health down, but, I did it, like, the long way, which is very inefficient and slow, but I don't know, that worked a little bit for a while, but then the third phase was just a totally different thing. But I don't know, I found that's like some bosses and some enemies, like, it's just, you can play it a little differently. You can kind of spam that one combat art or whatever, where it's like a overhead kind of whirlwind type of attack. I forget what it's called. And that takes down a small chunk of health even when they're blocking. So you can kind of spam that on a lot of enemies and just whittle their health away. And then eventually their posture's easy to break. That's what I found is sometimes a good strategy too.
So I'm with you. I do it the way of whittling down their health, and then their posture bar doesn't recover as fast, right? And that's how you get him. Right. The other thing I'll say is that the prosthetic tool that's like the spear that like you run with, that one works really well on him because it breaks his posture, and you have enough time to like keep distance and then close in without worrying for one of his like asshole arrows, which are very irritating. And he'll shoot that every time you heal. I think it's like the way it's programmed is like anytime he sees you heal, he goes to shoot, which is really stressful. But that was the first point, like the first strong wall in the game. Like we talked about the bull being unorthodox and strange and difficult because of it. He's like the first boss in this game that's like legitimately difficult because he's difficult and not because he's different, if that makes sense. And just through repetition, I got him, man. And if you, in that third phase, you'll be able to, don't even really worry too much about his health because he is so aggressive that you're likelier to beat him based on posture than whittling his health with the first 2 levels. Right. And the lightning attack, I'm telling you, if you just roll under and behind him, it's like a 2-swipe thing. And then you can do all of the back damage you want to him. And then he'll get real aggressive, turn around, you just deflect him, and you can whittle him down pretty fast in that third phase. I don't even remember healing in the third phase. I had some gourds with me, but he's so aggressive at that stage that you don't even really have time to heal, So the way I looked at it is like, I don't even have to worry if I get to the third phase with health. I just need to worry about having a lot of health. And I didn't even worry about ever healing. It was just like deflecting and rolling behind him. So
yeah, it's definitely the toughest fight so far. And so like you said, I've been out for a week, but so I don't know if I ever mentioned, like now, like I'm fully in neck deep. Just,
awesome.
It's stupidly good. The combat is so unique and rewarding. I don't know, it's just one of those things. It's just, thank you From Software, thank you Miyazaki. It's an excellent game.
Obviously, you're probably at the stage with me that there's not going to be a whole lot you want to talk about until we finish the game right and talk about our whole journey. One thing I found out, and this is something I haven't even been able to accomplish, but the headless,
I skipped over him.
Dude. So apparently, he has an item, and this is something I read. It's not something I found out because I haven't killed him. He has an item that's essentially like a permanent version of the Gotchin sugars. But specifically one of them. I don't remember which one. Like he gives you like a gourd type thing, but it's for the sugars, which is really interesting. That's why they're so difficult, is because he gives you like a pretty powerful. I wouldn't say powerful, but I guess useful, right? Because I wouldn't consider the gotchin sugars and the akin sugars like powerful, but they are useful in certain situations. So, still haven't killed one. I've tried multiple times, but it's a no-go.
I haven't even tried.
It's not worth it.
Yeah,
from what I read, they're only like really viable to beat later on when you get some specific usable items, and I haven't gotten there yet, so it's not even worth trying. Besides Sekiro, is there anything else you dove into? Is it pretty much it?
That's been it. Watched Game of Thrones, of course, but otherwise, yeah, I played a lot of Sekiro.
Jordan, I'm assuming you dove back into the pre-sequel again?
Well, you know what they say about assuming, Jared.
Makes an ass out of you and me.
This was a no video game week for Jordan.
Mark it up on the calendar.
Go ahead.
In the words of DJ Khaled, another one.
That is because I was reading my ass off, you could say.
Oh, cool.
I jumped into... Give me one sec here.
I read a little bit too. A little bit of The Witcher.
I've been meaning to get into A Song of Ice and Fire, but I just figured I don't want it to taint the show for me, and I also don't want to get through the books and be waiting with everybody else on the last two. So I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna have the show and appreciate it for what it is, and then once he decides to ever release the last two books, I'll read all of them. So
yeah, that is a very weird situation that like nobody knows how to feel about that. Talking about the show, it's a really complicated situation. I think made more complicated by the fact that he's continuing to write other books within the universe before he writes the actual books, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So I started reading a little bit of a simpler fantasy book called The Way of Shadows by Brent Weeks. And it is a book, boys.
It looks like Jace. Sorry. It looks like Jace from Magic the Gathering. It's cool.
Oh, cool. It is a book about assassins, and it's part of the Night Angel trilogy. And I guess this was released kind of... they've done this with books in the last 10 years, like Netflix style almost, where the trilogy was, let's see, it says October, November, December of 2008. So that's obviously the first one. And it's a lot lighter read than Song of Ice and Fire would be, and is still I would say, compelling and interesting fantasy universe to jump into. Obviously, you guys know that I love assassin stuff, and especially like kind of like fantasy or historical assassin stuff, obviously referencing Assassin's Creed there. But I also like modern day stuff too. But this is like the more hooded, like poison dart, poison knife type of stuff. Got a little magic thrown in there, of course, for good measure. And I'm enjoying it so far. So not too much to say about it because I've still got plenty to go. But mostly just the fact that it is a breezier read than something like Game of Thrones or Clash of Kings, I guess is the one I'm on. So
I like those between denser novels because it gives you it's like a refresher. It's kind of like after playing The Witcher 3, hopping into like an indie game, like a simpler, like fun indie game. It just is like
exactly.
You don't have to focus as much. Not that you're not focusing, but it's like it's more relaxing, and I don't know.
It doesn't require quite as much brain power or as much of the space in your mind, maybe. And drawing that back to video games like you just did, we're the conversation has been had recently that like, there's so many great types of games now where we're at that there's something for any person or any occasion or any mood that you're in, right? And of course, books are one of the oldest forms of entertainment, much older than games or movies. What?
I just thought about like somebody being like, books, the original video games.
Well, I was just gonna say that they're in that same vein of like, there's so many different types of books and kinds of books for, like I said, any occasion, any mood, or any person, any situation or feeling that you might be having that you want to kind of accompany with this book. So that has been good, but even more than that, what I've been reading, as I mentioned in our chat, is comic books. Been finally catching up on those, because I do this a lot where I'll kind of like quick drop in and out of comics, not to where some people like to drop out for, you know, maybe a year at a time or something and then come back around. But I'll drop in and drop out every now and then for a couple weeks or months. And I think I've finally done it, Jared. I'm kind of proud of myself. I think I've finally whittled myself down on, like, you know, the amount of comics that I'm trying to read at any given time.
It's hard, man. It's
a fucking tough realization to come to, man. But at a certain point, if you're gonna be a comic book lover and a lover of ongoing comics, then you're gonna have to come to terms with the fact that the system is broken and there are far too many comics. I mean, I can't say that enough. Like, way too many comics, and not just from DC or Marvel, but just comic books at any given Wednesday that are released. The list is ridiculous. So I've realized that I have to stop trying to convince myself that I need to read everybody's books in the Marvel or DC universe to know what's going on, because that's just not the case.
Yeah.
You really only need to read a couple books to know what the fuck is going on. And comics at least have adapted to the fact that there's a lot of things that don't matter as much as they should, unfortunately, but the good part about that is you can jump in quicker than you might think you would be able to, and also the fact that they'll remind you with editor notes or dialogue, like, yeah, you know, when that ship blew up, you know, that's why we don't have this ship in this book anymore, or whatever, things like that. So like I said, I've just gotten to the point where I've cut down so many things. Like, yeah, I do like that character, I do like Black Widow, and the fact that she has her own book is cool, but I can't, you know. The fact of the matter is, if I'm having trouble reading the characters that I really want to read, like Batman or Venom or Thor over on the Marvel side, it's like I definitely need to put away fucking Black Widow, you know, the stuff that, like, I think is cool, but I don't, you know, I'm not in love with that shit. So there have been some unfortunate cuts to the list, but I've whittled down quite a bit, and I'm sure as we go on I'll whittle down more. Unfortunately, within the last 6 months to a year, there's been a lot of cancellations from DC that have been, you know, stuff that's been going since Rebirth. So I did have to let go of some stuff that I had started, but I was like, you know what, instead of trying to catch up to this book that they just canceled or are about to finish up, I might as well just put that away as well. So things like that. I know I haven't actually talked about any comics that I've read, but just shout out a few, I guess. Let's see. So as far as superhero stuff, I caught up with Venom, and I gotta say, are you still reading Venom, Jared?
I've never read it. I've downloaded them. I just haven't gotten to it. No.
Ah, man. Well, I really liked Volume 1, and I think Volume 2, and kind of working into 3 now since I'm on single issues. It's good stuff, but they're building a bigger story that I felt like there was more interesting stuff going on in Volume 1, whereas this is like more building where they're at right now in the series. I guess issue 12 is what I just read. And then there's also the Web of Venom thing that are just one-shots coming through every couple months maybe, that has to do with the main Venom series and really does tie in, and then is also explaining the situation with Carnage. So that part is actually pretty cool. So I will say I appreciate what they're building to, but just maybe a little bit of a stall where the main series is at. And then I've been enjoying Justice League. I told you guys I was reading Drowned Earth, which is pretty cool. I finished up Infinity Wars, which... Do you care if I talk about the ending of that, Jared?
I've read all of it.
Oh, you finished Infinity Wars, the most recent one.
Yeah.
Okay. So you know about spoilers, obviously, for anyone listening, but you know about Loki, or not Loki, Adam Warlock, giving the Infinity Stones their own souls via the Soul Stone, right? So I was like, when he's explaining it, I'm like, I don't know, it is kind of dumb. But then when they fly off and they're entering other people, and then, you know, other people are like using the power of the Infinity Stone without actually, you know, without it being like a superhero with an Infinity Stone who could really fuck shit up. It's just that, like, it's a new superpower. It's kind of latent in their body since they absorbed it or whatever. I did think that was cool. Infinity Wars overall was good. Not quite what I had hoped. I would say that I told you guys I've really enjoyed all the DC events since Rebirth, whereas Marvel, since Fresh Start, has had some good and some not as good, I would say. And then as far as non-superhero stuff, let's see. So I found out Paper Girls is ending soon, so I caught up with that. Huge shout out to Paper Girls, because I fucking love that book. It's wild and crazy, but it is a very good book. Let's see. Trying to think through. I did read a lot. You know, with comics, you go through so many so quick. I know I've talked about Redlands before. Just want to give that another quick shout out. Let me see. Caught up with Walking Dead.
You're not reading Oblivion Song, right?
I am. I didn't catch up with that, so I'm like,
okay.
I got 2 or 3 issues to read there. But that's another thing I do like about comics, is being able to drop out. I've talked about how I don't like DC releasing their main books twice a month, because that's obnoxiously often. There's already too many comics to read, as I've stated. But, you know, Oblivion Song, I drop out for 3 months and I got 3 books to read, which takes me a total of less than 20 minutes. So that's the nice part about, like, once you're entrenched in comics, you just have the books that you're reading and you can kind of jump in, jump out. So, but sure, so shout out to Oblivion Song. I know I've talked about that one as well. And then Rat Queens is another good one. As far as indie stuff goes, I read. I've also been watching Greg's Comic Book Club, so I've been reading some of the stuff that is recommended or required reading, and I read Swing, Volume 1, which I thought was good. So yeah, there's some shout outs.
I have a long list. I'm going to try to get through as many of these as fast as possible. Sure. Usually I only have a couple of things, but so one, I'll just start off with comics. Not too much to say, just, you know, enjoying what I'm reading. The one thing I will mention is there's a new series that came out called Fair Lady, and it's essentially Mulan meets Batman in a high fantasy world. So nice. I'll explain it real quick. The main character is a female, and before the story starts in issue 1, she was a woman who fought in a war that women weren't allowed to fight in, right? Hence Mulan. So, like, part of her character is being somebody who, like Mulan, doesn't like, you know, the sexist roles and not being able to protect her country or protect her people because she's a woman, right? She sees it as outdated.
Who is this girl I see staring straight back at me? I get
but
you.
now she's a private detective, right? So here comes the Batman aspect of it. And obviously, since she was a soldier and stuff, she's physically capable. And her sidekick is, both of you know what a Khajiit is, right? From Elder Scrolls?
Of course.
So imagine...
Yes, the cats. Those are the cats.
Khajiit has many wares. Imagine
a bright yellow Khajiit with the stature of Colossus from X-Men. Like a giant Khajiit. Nice. Like just a buff dude. And they're partners together. And the first issue just kind of sets up the world. The city that they are investigating their first case is like giant armor that's collapsed into the ground, if that makes sense. So think of like a giant ass knight wearing armor, and if they fell and their armor pieces broke off, and the city kind of built around those broken armor pieces. It's like there's giant like hands and stuff. It's really cool.
That's kind of a trope in especially fantasy stuff, but
yeah.
I love it, man. I love a big giant thing that is like, you know, nature grows around and all that.
The cool thing, so obviously when you hear about like detective type comics, one of my biggest worries is that the cases aren't going to have any substance. It's just going to be like straightforward, like you're watching an episode of like CSI or something, right? Which you can love CSI, but a lot of times there's no nuance or interest in it. It's just like, oh, this is a setup. This is what I expect. The ending of the first case does have a really cool twist. Not in a, this wasn't the person you expected it to be, but like in an emotional characterization type way of like, some of the people involved you think are one way, they end up being another way, but it's not because of like tropey reasons. It's very refreshing and interesting. Like I said, because it's a detective comic, like it's literally telling you the story of it is literally a spoiler because the whole comic is about them solving a mystery, right? So I want to be vague, but really enjoying it. Obviously, everything else I've been reading, Oblivion Song and all that stuff is great. Like you, I jumped into a lighter novel to start reading. I'm reading through Redwall again.
Nice. Real quick, Jared, just a comic. I won't interrupt you too long.
No problem.
Just shouting out the name.
Yeah, I've heard good things. I want to get to it. There's so many comics, man. Like Black Science, I want to get to. Paper Girls,
the thing about Black Hammer, I guess I am talking about it now, is they've done like 13 issues of the main series, and then they've done like maybe 6+ spin-offs. You know, there's a couple one-shots. Like, it's the Black Hammer universe that you're getting into. You're not just doing the one title, so I would not blame you with Black Hammer. But it is great.
So with Game of Thrones, I really want to get into more fantasy, right? Obviously, Game of Thrones isn't super fantasy, but there is magical aspects to it and stuff. But
Redwall's the shit, man.
Yeah, really enjoying it. Obviously, it's a simpler read, but just getting back there, reading from the beginning.
So you're just reading the OG Redwall novel.
Yeah, I have the first 5 books.
20
I think.
books.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like 20 books in that series, but dude, a lot of great ones, and Redwall is definitely one of them. Dude, like, Dom, do you know what Redwall is? You know about
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's just fantasy anthropomorphic animals, but it's like this perfect British tone.
It's
beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's lovely.
It's obviously not as brutal as Game of Thrones, right? But it's like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings mixed with like... It's a lot of the main characters are rodents, so it's like mice and weasels and ferrets and stuff.
And it's certainly not like, you're not going to read it, even though it's certainly readily available to kids. It is like technically a children's novel, but they don't feel like a man, and there's not like, they're not pulling any punches.
Dude,
you know, like
reading the first...
They're having battles, you know, they're having real ass battles.
So I'm like 15 chapters through the first book, and when they introduce Clooney the Scourge, which is like he's the main big bad at the beginning, Dom, they're not afraid of like, he kills people. Like, he kills people, and like they describe like the rats like missing legs and like getting their skulls caved in. It's like, it's for kids, dude, but it's not for kids.
Yeah,
you know?
It's right, exactly. And also like the villains are actually scary. Like fucking, I read one within the last year, and I was like, holy shit, this guy. It was a cat. It was like a bobcat or whatever. And I was like, God damn, this dude, right?
Well, like, he's like, yeah, go find some recruits for our army. And they're like, okay, sir, but what if they don't want to? And he's like, well, then just kill him. Like, he has, like, no remorse. And they come back with, like, severed heads. And it's crazy. It's really cool, though. And I want to eventually read Mouse Guard, too. It sucks that Disney canceled the animated movie. Apparently, it might get picked up by Netflix, which is cool. But I've never read Mouse Guard, which is similarly the same thing, Dom. Anthropomorphic, like rodent type creatures and animals in a high fantasy setting. In terms of video,
by Brian Jacques, though, right?
No, it's I forget the author of that, but it's not Brian Jacques. In terms of video games,
can I just say, I gotta shout him out. He used to intro every episode of the animated series himself
with that sweet British voice. So good.
Yeah, it was fucking dope, dude. Brian Jacques, shout out.
Yeah, he sounds like a Game of Thrones character. It's dope. So in terms of video games, I actually bought 4 video games this week because of the sales.
Whoa.
So I bought Katana's. I'm going to get to all these games, some more than others.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Bought Katana Zero because it's new. Bought Disney Afternoon.
Tonight, right?
I played it.
Zero's tonight.
What came out today? I played about 2 hours this morning. Yeah.
A Thursday release. You fucked me up, Katana Zero. I got you preloaded, boy.
Disney Afternoon Collection, which is a collection of all the classic Disney games on the NES, so like Darkwing Duck and DuckTales and DuckTales 2 and Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. That was like $4, $4 or $5, so I had to buy it on the Xbox Spring Sale. It's one of those games that I've been wanting to buy, and I'm like, I'll eventually get it. It's always on sale. Finally picked it up. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dom. I think you played this game and you talked about it a long time ago. Maybe not too long ago. I bought Reigns Game of Thrones. Did you ever play that? I couldn't remember.
Wasn't that a mobile game?
It was a mobile game, but it got ported to Switch, and it's $3 on sale right now. And then I used some of my coins, so it ended up being like $1.50 or something.
Nice.
Really cool strategy game. Are you guys familiar with Reigns as like a property for games?
No, it's like, is it tower defense or strategy?
No, it's I don't know how I'd describe it. So essentially, it's a deck of cards. You get a deck of cards. You don't get to see them. You pick whatever person you want to be the king or queen. It was a game before Game of Thrones, but it adapted really well to the world of Game of Thrones. So essentially, you start the game with Daenerys Targaryen, okay? And it's in the middle of the screen. Her picture's there. And other cards pop up of other characters, and they put you in situations where you have to choose this or that. And at the top, you have 4 resources. You have power, religion, common people's like happiness, and money, right? The amount of money you have. And you're making these decisions, and they're affecting those 4 bars up top. And anytime one of those 4 bars gets all the way to the top or all the way to the bottom, your reign is over and you die. So it's about managing them and keeping all of them in the middle. So you can't save a bunch of money. You can't spend all your money. You can't become too religiously zealot. You can't become like opposed to religion entirely. You have to play the Game of Thrones. Exactly. And depending on the characters you interact with, if you live long enough and you do certain interactions, like for instance with Varys, he gives you options of like bribing certain people or traveling to Winterfell or going to a tavern. You have the ability to lock other characters you can start a reign with. So you start with Daenerys, and so far I've unlocked Cersei, Jon, Sansa, and Tyrion. And each of them have their own like narrative pathways. So like with Sansa, she's coming from the perspective of maybe I need to go back to Winterfell. People in Winterfell consider me the true heir, whereas when I'm Tyrion and I try to deal with people from the north, they're more opposed to me, so the decisions have bigger consequences. It's really cool. I've played about 45 to 50 minutes of it. Honestly, for $3, it's a steal. You guys should definitely pick it up and check it out.
Pick it up.
It's definitely one of those games you pick up and
for $3.
Yeah, I think it's normally $6. It's not a very expensive game,
cool.
And it's just a really cool pop in, pop out, and strategy game. Awesome.
Just wanted to say about coins real quick. I've realized something. When you use coins on a purchase, you earn less coins, right?
Yeah.
So it would stand to reason that we should not use coins when we're buying like a full $60 game. Metroid Prime 4 you're buying, don't use any coins. You'll reap the most coins, and then as you buy your dinky $6, $15 indie games, you use your coins, and you were already going to make less anyways. So
exactly, like spend the $60 now, and then eventually you'll see like a $5 game on sale, and you can practically get it for free, as opposed to paying $54 now and then not having coins for You're not going to get very many coins from a $10 game anyways, so it's okay if that number is lessened. But you are going to get a lot of coins from a $60 game, so you should buy those with your own money, and then you'll reap more coins, which is free money in the end. So I think I figured that shit out, boys. The 2 other games I bought, I already mentioned Katana Zero. Purchased Hollow Knight on Xbox because it was $8. Haven't gotten to it yet. I think I'm going to play through it on there since it's been so long since I've played Hollow Knight. I figured gives me an excuse to start up again, the achievements, all that stuff. Yeah. And then once I get to the point in the Xbox version where I am in the Switch version, I'll be more comfortable picking that one up as well, and not jumping in the middle of the goddamn game. Katana Zero. Neither of you guys have played it, right? Obviously, this is a game I've talked about this game for like a year and a half, 2 years.
If I had known, man, I would have been playing it today.
The cool thing, I saw reviews. It's getting a lot of 9s. Easy Allies gave it an 8, which is still really solid.
So that means it seems like the wait, because I've talked about how, excuse me, this is one of the few games I've had to keep being like, Jared, where the fuck is this game? Seems like the wait was worth it.
One thing I will say, the narrative is bonkers in a good way. Like, there's some stuff that happens in this that is, like, definitely not straightforward, coming out of left field. it's a lot more mature than I thought. Like there's people like snorting coke in this game that are like bad guys, obviously.
They're about to get fired from Kingdom Hearts.
It's a mind trip. This isn't a spoiler at all because this is like in the very beginning of the game you find this out. The guy you're playing as, the samurai that can like manipulate time, apparently he got hurt during war and his perception of time was messed up. Like he had a brain injury and his perception of time is off. So obviously I haven't played a whole lot of the game, but it seems like there's possibly an explanation that you're not manipulating time itself. You just interpret time differently than people because of your brain injury from the war, which is really cool.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Because time is certainly objective, I think.
And the way the missions are structured is cool, and they start playing with it and messing with your head because you're not... The way the game works is you finish a level, and it's basically like you planning it out, and then the game plays through it. So it's like a videotape of what you just did.
Yeah.
They mess with that as if it's like footage and stuff, so there's parts of the story that get corrupted and stuff messes up. Every time you finish a level, you go back to your apartment, you have a cup of tea, you go to bed, and you can listen to the TV and it tells you news about the day, and it specifically mentions and gives you more lore and context to your previous mission. And you get these dossiers as missions. You're going after specific people. They give you this folder, you open it, it gives you all the details about him. You go about your mission.
I love a good dossier, Jared.
You go about your mission, you come back, and the cool thing with the news is they're telling you straightforward what the information is. So sometimes it's exactly what you expect from what the dossier said. Sometimes you will feel as if you were manipulated into killing that person. And they play around with it. I hit like the first narrative, like big twist, like towards the end of the first act. There's when the game starts, you have 10 days left. It just says 10 days remain. I'm currently at 6 days remain. Who's to say if that's because of time and the way it's manipulated and you don't perceive time? I don't know if necessarily when I hit 0 days remain if that's the end of the game, but just for references in terms of how far I am, every mission takes a day. But it's not just like one room. It's multiple rooms. There's like a hotel I've gone to. There's like a complex. The last mission I did, and this isn't spoiler, I'm not going to tell you specifically what's in the level, but it's a Hollywood studio. And there's some really cool Easter eggs in it that shout out like, you know, ties to Hollywood and special effects and stuff. So
Yeah.
It's lived up to my expectations. Obviously, I've only played a couple of hours of it, but it's exactly what I expected. The gameplay's solid. It's tight. Obviously, we know the big hook with this game is that if you can die by a single hit or a single bullet and it rewinds to the beginning of the level for you to do it again.
Punishment for death, Jared.
None. In a good way, because it's all about learning. This game isn't about you getting a game over and restarting from the top. It isn't about...
There's no dragon rot.
Exactly. It's just, hey, the levels are puzzles. That's the best way to describe it. There's a puzzle, and there's multiple ways to solve it, and you just have to figure out what tools you have at your disposal. One thing I didn't know about this game is there's items in the world that you can pick up and throw at people. So far, I've encountered like a butcher's axe, a bottle, a Molotov cocktail, and they can... Without spoiling things, they can interact with the environment in interesting ways that I didn't expect. I thought it was straight up, I'm a samurai, these are guys with guns or swords and stuff, and it's my sword against them. But the openness and creativity available for you in this game per level is really cool. I'm just blown away in terms of it meeting my expectations. Because
here we go,
this year has been a year of games not meeting expectations. So it's good to have, and I'm not saying it's game of the year by any means. Who knows? I haven't finished it yet, but it's just exactly what I expected in a great way. It's awesome. It's only $15 too, so it's not too expensive either.
I'm gonna play this.
It's fun, especially with Sekiro, Dom. It's like it's not as punishing, but you still want to be a badass samurai. So it's like, you're struggling with the bosses.
Does this kind of feel like 2D Sekiro?
In a way, it's very much about deflecting. It's way faster, obviously, than Sekiro. It's a lot faster of gameplay, but There are some similarities because one of the biggest things in terms of handling people with guns is deflecting bullets. So it is, having that muscle memory and those quick reflexes.
You watched the Kind of Funny Gamescast, right, guys?
For Sekiro?
I mean, it was multiple weeks ago where Tim was talking about going to a Nintendo event and some kid was trying to beat a Katana Zero level forever and ever.
Oh, God.
Like, got really quiet and then all of a sudden just screams, yes! When he finally beat the level. For this whole event.
Speaking of difficulty, I've gone to the point where I wouldn't say difficult, but the challenges and puzzles of the level are more complex. It definitely starts out and it's like, here's a guy behind a door, here's a couple of guys. There's a lot more stealth mechanics in this game than I thought. There's a whole level early on that's dedicated to not killing anybody, stealthing your way through to the objective, and on your way back, having combat and killing people. There's some really interesting, cool stuff. Definitely worth $15. This and Reigns were solid purchases. Disney Afternoon Collection, I played some Darkwing Duck. Those games aren't great, but it's more of a nostalgia thing, For $4, it's what I expected. And then what was the last game I purchased? Hollow Knight. I haven't jumped back in yet, but week of good purchases. A lot of stuff.
Word.
A lot of stuff. Obviously Game of Thrones and watched My Hero Academia, but
Gang.
Let's hop into news.
Can we give a quick second to just give Game of Thrones thoughts, non-spoiler thoughts?
Let's go. We're running long, so let's go as quick. I'm gonna maybe 1 or 2 sentences at most.
Just a yay or nay on the episode is all I need. Dom, you like it?
Yeah, it's yay. It's a good first episode, right?
First season premiere, yay. Yeah, I'm with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it set things up. That was what it was about. So it was solid. Nothing blowing my pants off or anything.
If this was an episode 5, I'd be vastly disappointed. It's an episode 1, completely okay with it. Yeah. Sure. Let's hop into this news. So we had the announcement of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Sorry, not the announcement, the reveal. We've known about this game since last year when Vince Zampella was strong-armed into talking about it at E3.
Hey, Vinny, what are you guys working on over there? Star Wars.
He was stoned out of his mind. It was so funny. It seemed like it anyways. He just seemed like he was out of it. Whether he was zonked on medication or something, he just was like, I don't want to be here.
Hollywood types, you never know. Andrea Renee could have slipped him something. She's known for her drug usage.
Coolest thing, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is coming out the 15th, which is 3 days after The Mandalorian premieres on the Disney Plus service. So we're getting a lot of Star Wars in the month of November leading up to Episode 9, which is dope. You play as Cal Kestis, who's a surviving Padawan of Order 66. Stars Cameron Monaghan, which is surprising, the kid from Gotham.
The guy from Shameless, you mean?
Shameless as well, yeah. Sorry.
But he plays Bruce Wayne in fucking Gotham, right? So
no, he doesn't play Bruce Wayne. He's Joker.
Oh.
Yeah. Or the inspiration for Joker or whatever it is. Coolest thing, he seemed really into it and he is stoked to be the star of this game, which I'm excited for. Obviously, you'd assume, they're going to hire somebody who's passionate about the project. It's not always the case. He seemed really passionate about it, which is cool. So Cal, the character he's playing, is a ship salvager. So he's kind of laying low, hiding from the Inquisitors and just trying to survive as a surviving Jedi, or Padawan, obviously. One of the interesting things that people didn't really talk about is Deborah Wilson's in this game. During the panel, they talked about how she's... it's not a traditional Padawan... is it Master? I forget what the...
Master Apprentice.
Yeah, Master Apprentice relationship, which is cool because I was hoping it wouldn't be the typical thing we've seen in Star Wars. Deborah Wilson, if you're not familiar, she was in Mad TV. She's a black actress. She's also the black character in Wolfenstein that's part of your team that almost blows you up with the grenade. Do you remember that, Dom? The one that jokes about the phony grenade when BJ's climbing up the elevator and he meets the Jewish guy and the black woman. That's her.
Yes.
So she's awesome. Yeah.
That's like one of my favorite parts of that game, by the way.
So the thing with her is that she's a comedian. So I like that there's going to be some levity to this game. I hope, anyways. I'd assume they wouldn't hire her if the character wasn't comedic in some way. The one thing we know about gameplay is that they talked about thoughtful combat. To me, it read a lot like, and I know we use a comparison for this for everything, but From Software, in terms of, they said you have to size up your enemy before you attack them and not just like go gung-ho. I think we saw a little bit of actual gameplay in the trailer in terms of, do you guys remember the scene when he wall runs and then he uses the force to get up on that ledge? Do you guys remember that specific scene? Probably not. It was a brief scene. So. The only reason I say that is likely gameplay is because it's Respawn, and all of their games have featured wall running. So when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, that's Respawn specifically, because it looked like their type of animation for a wall running type maneuver.
I will say, when they said like this is not a stealth game at all, I was like, but Jedis are stealthy, man. Jedis are stealthy.
Yeah.
I want a crouch button in a Jedi game. You know what I mean?
I think there'll be a crouch button in this game, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe there won't be. I'd assume, because you're going to be crawling through a vent at some point in this game. Lock it up, 100%. You're going to have to crouch. But that might be like a QTE or something. It might not be you actually crouch. Who knows? I hope there's a roll button for combat. Like a dodge roll kind of thing.
You know what I want? I need that dash, boy. That Jedi dash.
You know what would be a cool dash if, like, you use the force to push the ground away from you? You know what I mean? Like, put your hand down and go poof, and, like, kind of like air bending, but obviously it's the force. Kind of just push yourself away. That'd be pretty dope. I don't want to... We have quite a bit of news to get to, so I don't want to spend too long on this, but once again, like we did with Game of Thrones, just, your impressions of it. For me, I can't wait to see gameplay. That's when I'll get really excited. Yep. It was a cinematic trailer, so it's whatever. But it was more than I thought we were going to see. I thought it was actually going to be like a 30-second teaser.
This was solid.
Yeah. I'm not 100% all in, but I'm really excited. So.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want to see gameplay, but that was a cool trailer. It was interesting how they leaned so heavily on no multiplayer, no microtransactions, and they made that like very emphasized, like in tweets and all sorts of things. So, I don't know. We'll see. It was just weird how much they pushed that.
To that point, and I don't want to go too long on this. We've talked about how it's weird how Respawn seems to have a lot of independence from EA as opposed to other studios. And it came out that Vincent Pell is actually like on the board of directors at EA. So that might lean towards their ability to be able to do some of the things that aren't the game plan. Also, this game isn't on the Frostbite engine. It's on Unreal, which is huge.
Very important, yeah.
They also weren't strong-armed into being on Frostbite, just like with Apex Legends. So, sorry, Jordan.
So, real quick, I think my biggest thing is just excitement to see. Obviously, my love for Star Wars is well noted, but my excitement to see the second sister is the villain of the game, and that means she's one of the Inquisitors, and that is something that was introduced in the Clone Wars and has been continued in the comics. So, the Inquisitors are those who were tasked to hunt down the remaining Jedi after Order 66 by the Emperor. And very cool characters, in my opinion. Not everyone likes them, but I really do. And so the fact that they have chosen to make one of them the main villain of this game is very exciting to me. So, yeah.
Agreed. Cool. She's very intimidating. It's a good way of having a villain that, like, strikes fear, And not, like...
Yeah, and they're good, like... They're great mid-tier, for Clone Wars or a video game. It's like they're scary, they're intimidating, they're powerful, but they're not like an actual Sith apprentice necessarily. They're not Darth Vader himself, So
we're all excited. Can't wait for gameplay. Probably going to see it at Xbox, and obviously EA Play is not having a conference, but Xbox is probably going to have this during their conference because of the deal that it was evident during that presentation of the deal that Xbox has with them.
Sorry to interrupt. My other one big thing about this, I think that the new movies have done a really poor job like discussing the point of the fact that even if there's not, Jedi younglings being trained at some temple in the Republic anymore, like this gigantic galaxy still has a lot of Force wielders, Force sensitive people or, alien beings, whatever. So
what?
You get this one kid who can float a broom in Last Jedi, and that's about it.
I'm going to come at you after the show for this. We'll talk later.
almost got started. I'm holding myself back.
Yeah, let's wait because we're running long.
Ridiculous how the new trilogy treats it, right? Like ridiculous how the new trilogy treats Force wielders. But this is like the opposite and doing it properly, in my opinion, which is like, no, just because there's not a master apprentice system going on, there's still people out there that are Force wielders and maybe even powerful in the Force, true Jedi. So the fact that we have a whole game around it in a time within the universe that isn't, where Jedis are just out in the open and the big shit across the galaxy. Those are the times I really like, and I like the fact that they're acknowledging, there are Force wielders out here. So
we have a couple of other quicker news stories, and we're going to get to the beefy thing, which is the PS5 info that was revealed by Mark Cerny, not Mike Cerny. So first off, Jason Schreier reported this week that Sony Interactive Entertainment was responsible for Destiny 2 not having character transfers. Obviously, when we first heard about Destiny, there was this whole 10-year plan of bringing your character from the first game all the way through to the end of the 10-year journey. That never happened. Apparently, Sony blocked the feature for PS4, so Bungie decided to scrap it for all versions. No other details were provided, but yeah, pretty shitty. When Destiny 2 came out, that was one of the biggest questions, like, why doesn't this have character transfer? And it's just a weird thing that you hear about behind the scenes. And I'm not saying that Xbox doesn't have these type of things that happen too behind the scenes, but PlayStation has talked about like, oh, we're for the gamer and stuff, and then you hear about this stuff, and it's like you have to realize sometimes that's like it's just marketing, and it's a very weird decision, especially considering they had a marketing deal with Destiny. So I don't know what they would lose from you being able to transfer your character to Destiny 2. I don't know if it's a back end thing for the PSN, maybe. I don't know.
I'm sure it is. Yeah, I don't think it's a them losing thing. I think it's a them either being lazy. I don't think it's laziness though. I think it's got to be some bullshit PSN back end.
Some weird,
They've just got so fucked so far up the creek that it's not going to be able to happen.
Because and I know this is going to sound like a very dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. There have been games on PlayStation where you've transferred information from one game to the sequel, right?
Telltale.
Yeah, because there's games on Xbox as well
Mass
that do that.
Effect Trilogy, back in PS3 you could do Mass Effect Trilogy,
Yeah. I know it's a dumb question, or just making sure.
No, it's not a dumb question. It's a dumbfounding question that you even have to ask. Like, wait, we've done this before. Yeah,
because I just don't want to talk about like, oh, it's been done before, and no, it hasn't. So, lastly, Inside Xbox was held for the month of April. It's actually the last one before E3. They're not doing one next month, which I think is kind of smart. There's no point to release information the month before E3 to save it all, right? We got some information on a couple of things. I want to tackle the Phil Spencer thing first, and then we'll get to the all digital, because the Phil Spencer thing is just a quote. So he was interviewed about E3, and he said, "We understand the responsibility and opportunity of being the only platform owner with a live show this year. It's a part of the year where gaming takes center stage over movies and other entertainment mediums, so we plan to make the most of it." He also talked about how he had been essentially alpha testing Project xCloud. He had been playing Destiny 2 and Crackdown 3 on his phone as he was traveling to Japan. That was actually the more interesting...
backdoor access, do you, Phil?
He talked about having his own server. He literally has his own server for xCloud, which is dope. The more interesting thing to that comment is he said he was in Japan again. We've heard about him going over the last couple of years, and he really understands that Microsoft's partnership with Japanese developers and publishers was kind of shitty before he got there. And he's made it a point to go over there and try to mend those. Like, we've had Kingdom Hearts 3 recently on an Xbox stage. We had Devil May Cry 5 revealed on an Xbox stage. Like, those are huge, considering Xbox has never been tied to Japanese publishers and developers the same way Nintendo or Sony has. So I just thought it's really cool that he's continuing this partnership. He said, "I'm going back there now and I have friends that I meet up with." Because when he was initially doing it, he was creating these relationships, and now he actually has these relationships built. Another game we saw was Jump Force, right? That was debuted on Xbox's stage. Another Japanese published game. So really cool. I don't know if we have anything else to add there. He also stated that we're expected to see stuff from the new studios. We assumed that, but it's cool to have confirmation, right? That we're going to see new stuff from their first party. I think they changed the name, right? It's not Microsoft Game Studios anymore. I think it's Xbox Game Studios. So, the other bit of news, and this is, I wouldn't say controversy. There's some people who seem like it's a missed opportunity. I agree with them to a certain extent, and I actually read a couple of tweets that I want to add on to the end of this that added a different conversation to it. So they announced the Xbox One S All Digital Edition. Obviously, it's the Xbox One S without a disc drive. It's coming out May 7th.
Wait, so they didn't call it something else?
No, it's called the Xbox One S All Digital Edition. That was never them that announced
bad,
that.
Dude. Holy shit! It should be the Xbox
I think it's
One.
Good.
I think just like my initial reaction here is like, wow, that's terrible. It should be like Xbox One M for mini or something, something like that.
Oh, well, it's not mini. It's the same size. It just doesn't have a disc drive. I think all digital makes sense.
Wait,
I
the
think
exact same size as the Slim?
Yeah, exact same size.
Wow.
Because they had to keep all the internals outside, besides the Blu-ray drive, obviously. And I mean, it makes sense to not do a whole R&D for a product that, and we'll get to this. So it's coming out May 7th. $249.99, which obviously we all assumed it would be $200, so the price is higher than we expected. The one thing I will say, and the caveat is, and we'll get to this in the conversation, the Xbox One S is listed at $300. It's always on sale for $250 and cheaper, even like $200, right? I get that. Obviously, this is more expensive than that from prices we see. The thing that they made a point to say during it is that when this is out, they'll make sure that this always is $50 cheaper than whatever the price of the S is, even if it's on sale. So obviously there's a weird pricing gap now because this hasn't released yet, and the Xbox One S is currently on sale. But from what they said, this will always be $50 cheaper than what retailers are deciding to put this at. So it's a weird thing. Like, I agree it's too high of a price, but because they added the caveat of the $50 thing, my assumption is like when this thing is out in the wild and for Black Friday you can get the regular Xbox One S for $200, I could see this being $150 because of what they said. It'll always be $150 cheaper when it's actually out there. There's another. So the thing I want to add to this is that Matt Piscatella, our boy over at MPD Gaming Group that gives us all the dope monthly reports for the industry at large in terms of sales, he brought up some things. One, he talked about how people see this as Xbox trying to get people to buy an Xbox towards the end of its life cycle. He said that this type of SKU doesn't make sense for that, especially because at the end of a life cycle you see the lowest amount of return for purchases. Like, you're not going to sell as many Xboxes or PlayStations at the end of the life cycle as you do at the beginning, right? So he says that even introducing a SKU at this point doesn't make sense if you want to get new people on the platform. He said from his perspective that this is Xbox testing the market for a new SKU that's never been introduced. Like, they're the first to market with this. He basically talked about how this isn't about them getting more people to the Xbox platform or getting people to rush out and buy this right away. It's about them testing the market and seeing how consumers respond to like an all-digital console. It was very interesting. He still said that he thought the price was high, but his perspective, I mean, the guy knows sales and stuff, so it was just an interesting perspective on the whole matter.
Yeah, I guess, but why can't you do that but make it cheaper? You can still get that same data, right?
Well, yeah, but see, the thing is that MSRP for the Xbox One S is $300, but the retailers sell it for cheaper, right?
Well, yeah, and I get that, but they need to be aware of what it looks like right now. Like, even if it probably, like you're saying, I would bet a paycheck that like in a couple months, later this year, like it's gonna be cheaper on sales and stuff. It just looks funny right now, is all.
Here's the thing. To my point, I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't think that this was Xbox positioning it as trying to make this a hot new product in terms of selling a bunch of units, because to Jordan's point, they didn't really change the form factor at all. Like, they didn't really do much. Like, if they were like, this is the all digital console we want to fly off store shelves, it would have a lower price point, and to Jordan's point, it probably would have been smaller. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there is more space now that they removed something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not,
yeah.
So it was cheaper for them to just probably manufacture an alternate shell for the box that doesn't have an opening for a disc tray, or whatever. And so that's probably what it is. But I'm so surprised by that. I thought it was going to be, like half as large or whatever.
I mean, not like it...
Spinning a disc is part of what heats a console up, so it's got to be way cooler automatically. You know?
I mean, it's not like it's... Worst case scenario, like, it doesn't hurt them, right? It's just an extra thing that maybe didn't do well, and it's fine, even if that's the case, right?
That's to Matt Piscatella's point, is he believes that they don't necessarily... Obviously, they want it to sell. No company releases something and wants it not to sell, but he said he thinks that they are just trying to test the market in terms of this type of thing. There was some mentions about, like, what if this was, like, with retailers, if they didn't want it super cheap. That's a weird conversation. I don't even think it's true. The other thing I forgot to add is this also comes with Minecraft, Forza Horizon 3, and Sea of Thieves, which is cool.
I mean, I think that's actually the weirder part, is that it doesn't come with Game Pass.
It does.
That seems like the more...
It comes with the thing where you can get 3 months of Game Pass for $1 in it.
Oh, okay. So that makes sense. Gotcha.
So you essentially get 3 months of Game Pass for free. $1 is essentially free. People were complaining, well, yeah, but Minecraft, Sea of Thieves, and Forza Horizon 3 are all on Game Pass. Not true. Forza Horizon 3 isn't on Game Pass. The other two are. Just a clarity.
It isn't?
No, Forza Horizon 3 isn't on Game Pass.
I could have sworn that their games were, like, their first-party stuff was going to be on Game Pass, no matter what.
Forza Horizon 3 isn't.
New stuff.
But a lot of the newer stuff is.
Yeah.
Like Sea of Thieves when it first came out, Crackdown when it first came out, all that.
Forza Horizon 3 was 2015.
Older, right? Yeah.
2015, 2016. It's pretty old.
So Horizon 4's out.
Yes. Horizon 4 came out.
So they don't even have the old Horizon games on Game Pass. That's wild.
They have 1 and 2 on it. 3's not on it.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, that's pretty much it. I don't think we have too much to say. The price is it's not as low as we wanted. It's not shocking or anything. Also, you have to think of, I don't know, it's a whole useless conversation in my opinion. The conversation I want to have is about these PlayStation 5 details that we're going to hop into.
Woo!
So I'm going to go through all of the details. Feel free to chime in if there's something specific you want to talk about. But there's a lot of information to get through. There's also something I want to do at the end in terms of comparing rumored Xbox next-gen stuff with this one, but we'll get to that. So Mark Cerny decided to do an exclusive interview for Wired. In the exclusive interview with Peter Rubin from Wired, the architect behind the PlayStation's consoles, Mark Cerny, unveiled tons of information regarding their next-generation console. Mark Cerny started by saying, quote, "The key question is whether the console adds another layer to the sorts of experiences you already have access to, or if it allows for fundamental changes in what gaming can be." His numerous grandiose statements, that's my own wording there, he's very grandiose in a lot of things he says, point to the latter being Sony's desired direction with their next generation console, that being fundamental changes. Obviously, since his interviews come out, there have been people that argue that it doesn't seem like that. It just seems like an upgrade to what we're already accustomed to. That's a conversation for another day in terms of what he specifically means and what they're actually doing. But in terms of the actual information, we got confirmed that it's going to miss 2019, which is obvious. It's currently in the hands of some studios. Our assumption is probably first party, the big boys. But Sony recently accelerated the deployment of the dev kits, and that's according to Mark Cerny, so they're now shipping them all out, which leads to
accelerated deployment. Engage.
Yeah. There's a conversation we're getting to at the end in terms of why they're doing this now, and I think the accelerated deployment of the dev kits leads to them probably being afraid of leaks, right? And they wanted to say it before Kotaku does in terms of what this system's going to be. The console will be compatible with current PSVR headsets. Awesome. It will be backwards compatible with PS4 titles. Once again, awesome. This is something that
thank God.
We assumed was going to be the case, and we knew it's a no-brainer move. But once again, we've seen these companies, both PlayStation and Xbox, mismanage no-brainer moves. So it's good to just have confirmation.
Play my PS1 games on the motherfucker.
Oh no, I doubt that'll be a possibility. We'll get to that.
That's not a possibility. That's absolutely ridiculous.
I guess it's all goes back to the reason of the
separated stores between PS3 and PS4.
Yeah, it's dumb. It's really dumb. It will quote unquote support 8K graphics, which is a whole other conversation about viability of that and all of that. CPU.
Don't need it.
It's going to have an AMD.
Can't see an 8K. Sorry.
The CPU is going to be an AMD Ryzen 8 core, which is really solid. It's part of their new line of the AMD Ryzen CPUs. The GPU is a custom AMD Radeon Navi GPU, and it supports ray tracing, which is another conversation we're going to have at the end. And for those unfamiliar with ray tracing, it's essentially a high-end lighting technique that's used in games that makes them more purdy in terms of simple language. But it
can be used for more than lighting, which I thought was a really interesting point that Mark Cerny made for me. I was like, wow, that's really fucking cool that it can be used for audio or stuff like that.
It's very taxing, so it requires very powerful components to your PC, and there's a whole conversation of is like it even worth it because it's not really viable now. So it's impressive technology. It just, people are wondering if it's at the point where it makes sense to have it in a console because it's not even really viable on high-end PCs right now. So, but we'll get to that. A lot of stuff to dive in through here. The AMD chip that we were just talking about will have a unit for 3D audio, as Jordan mentioned. And Cerny specifically called out the lack of audio upgrades from PS3 to PS4. For those unfamiliar, Xbox One currently has support for Dolby Atmos audio, but PlayStation 4 doesn't. So
yeah, can I say something real quick here, Jared?
Yeah, go ahead, jump in.
Just that this is really not something that most people care about, but it's pretty important to me. And not only the 3D audio, but high definition audio, which you would think like, I mean, we're playing games in 4K, we're playing games at 1080p. Like, of course, the audio is going to be good. Like, I just played, or am playing Borderlands pre-sequel, and the cutscenes, the audio is so garbage. It's trash lit on fire turned into wet garbage. Like, it's so fucking bad, and it's really, really compressed. And I understand that that's a remaster, but still, it's ridiculous. I mean, there's plenty of games. Can't think of an example off the top of my head of anything I've played recently, but there are certainly games I've played that were built for this generation, PlayStation 4, with really poor audio quality, high compression, and artifacting and all that. And when we're, spending a chunk of 100 gigabytes to install Red Dead or Halo 5, whatever it may be, I definitely think that we should be able to access high quality audio at the very least. And then, moving on to like 3D audio, ray tracing audio stuff is really cool, but the Atmos stuff is really cool, but just even high definition audio would be nice. And I'm glad to hear that is something, because as we move on in the generations, there are just certain things that need to become a standard. And I think that's what Cerny is saying here, is like, it's kind of weird that we didn't implement this more from PS3 to PS4, because it's high quality audio has been around for quite some time, and it's evolved quite a bit, but I think that it certainly could have been something that we could have been experiencing already.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see we're at least getting around to that now.
And the thing is, it's a type of feature that there are audiophiles like you who desperately want this and will understand how bad it was before and how good it will be. And for people who don't really care about that, it still is a great improvement, because they won't know it was an upgrade, but they'll understand the benefits of like, oh, the audio is great in this game, So it's really cool.
The thing is, people don't realize about that when talking about 4K or whatever. Like, higher quality fidelity, whether it be visual or audio, is good whether you notice it or not.
Yeah.
Because if you get used to it and then you go back downgrade, you'll really notice it, and you'll realize how much you appreciate the better quality. And also your level of enjoyment of the experience will be higher without you even realizing it, but that's still a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Because you're more immersed in it, you're enjoying the experience more. You may not recognize that step up, that 2 to 5 point step up, however you want to quantify it, but it's like, it's still going to improve upon it, so you still want that there.
This next feature we're going to talk about, I'm excited for, and I think it's going to be very promising, but I think the specific information, the way they decided to debut it made it a lot more hyperbolic than what I think it will be. So that being, It'll feature an internal SSD, which is awesome.
Yeah.
The main selling point will be faster loading times, which is also awesome. The way they showcased this is they had a demo for Spider-Man on PS4. They did a loading screen. It took 15 seconds. They did the same thing on the dev kit unit for their... We're assuming it's a PS5. Just call it the PS5. And that loading time was shrunk down to 0.8 seconds, which is incredible, right? It's 14.2 seconds gone, shaved off.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Basically, at that point, it's just showing you a logo and then you're there. It's not even a loading screen at that point. It's
exactly.
like fading to black almost.
And the thing is, like, though Spider-Man is a very impressive game, it is a PS4 game. So with the PS5, you'll be able to play Spider-Man and get these loading times, but don't necessarily assume that, like, Horizon 2 is going to have that quick of loading times. Not to say that they're not going to have fast loading times, right, that you're used to. Yeah. But the 14 seconds or 15 seconds to 0.8, I think, is misunderstood in terms of what you'll be getting out of PS5 titles. You know what I'm saying? Because they're going to be pushing the hardware more.
It's still important to note that Mark Cerny mentions the, I guess, unlimited bandwidth that the SSD has, which is important. He kind of makes an offhand comment himself about how he has an SSD in his laptop, but there's still slowdown times. You know, like it's one of those things like where it has a lot of nitty gritty. Solid state drives, there is a lot of nitty gritty to it, where like you can be getting an expensive solid state drive that isn't necessarily going to improve things or actually give you a great experience. So it did seem like, at least because we know that Cerny is an OG and that he actually knows what's up and is when it comes to the tech, he knows what's up for real. So it's interesting that he noted, like, hey, by the way, guys, I know that not all SSDs are created equally. This is one of those ones that we're actually, putting some firepower under. So
I
really appreciate
I see what Jared's saying, where basically like a PS4 game isn't going to be pushing as much data as a PS5 game potentially, right? So there's that. But still, an SSD is like at least
huge step up,
incredibly faster than a hard disk drive, right? So it's going to be a crazy improvement. But this is a controlled demo on a PS4 game, so it might not be quite as dramatic as they described.
I'm not bashing Sony for this. I'm just talking about people's expectations, because you're going to get a PS5, you're going to start loading up Horizon Zero Dawn 2 or whatever, and the loading time is going to be like 6 seconds, right? Or 5 seconds or whatever. Maybe shorter, maybe a little bit longer. But people are like, oh, this wasn't 0.8 seconds. They lied. It's like, that's not necessarily what they're saying. So, yeah.
I'm still hopeful that we could be experiencing a cut in half, looking at loading times in general. Because,
I'm fine with that. I don't need it all the way down.
That's awesome, because for big open world games, specifically when you're initially loading into the world as you boot your console up for the day or whatever, a lot of times there's an initial loading time of a minute or more. Witcher 3 is a good example. These big games where you're going into
Skyrim,
a gigantic
Grand Theft Auto.
Jesus. It's like you're going to wait for a while before you get that initial jump, and then if you die, it's not going to be the longest loading time, but still. I'm hoping that we can cut those in half to where it's like 30 seconds to get into the world as opposed to a minute 15.
Well, yeah, that would be cool. I'm excited for just the idea that I think the reason he brought up his example of an SSD in his laptop was applications now aren't designed with specific types of hard drives or SSDs in mind, right? And that's why if you put an SSD in your PS4 today, you're not going to get that same loading time on Spider-Man he just described, right?
Exactly.
When it's all designed and optimized with that, in mind. And even parts of the gameplay, I think they brought this up a little bit, that we don't even think of, like not just loading times, but like being able to just move data more efficiently than before, like can affect gameplay differently when it's designed with that in mind.
Yeah.
Right? So that's
I
kind of
brought
a cool
up
part.
Input lag recently.
Yeah,
so the big thing with like the 15 seconds
if your
being
processing power is faster, I think it could help input lag possibly. But yeah,
the reduction in the 15 seconds to 0.8 seconds, all three of us understand that they're pushing for way faster load times. I think there's a group of people who are like, oh, that means that when Horizon Zero Dawn 2 comes out, there's going to be like almost seamless loading times. It's like you have to understand that what they're saying by this is that the SSD allows for way faster loading times. To your point, Jordan, my the peak of what I expect for loading times in terms of next gen is I hope they're cut in half. That's all I need. You know what I mean?
You look at the situation being, let's say, from a minute down to 30 seconds, and that, a minute to 30 seconds, what's the big difference? That's 30 seconds of your life. But you play as many games as we do. You watch as many loading screens as we do. You play games for as long as we do, 40 plus
all that
hours
time,
in one single game. You add that up at the end of the year, that is hours of your life, and several years down the road, that's days of your life. It's like there are build-ups here, and that makes a big difference literally at the end of the day, at the end of the year,
So, lastly, Cerny hinted at Death Stranding being a cross-gen title, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
They basically
almost
asked him,
didn't even hint. He almost just
smirked,
straight up came out and said it.
Yeah.
He was ready to go.
Which isn't surprising. We assume that Last of Us Part 2, Death Stranding, and possibly Ghosts of Tsushima, said it 10 times fast, will all be cross-gen titles to some capacity.
Okay. Which reminds me, that's Todd Howard kind of had the same sort of comment and weird smirk after they revealed Fallout 76 in some interview. They asked him about that for Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6, right? And which generation. He kind of said we'll see.
Yeah.
It was kind of the same.
Clearly.
Yeah.
If we get these consoles in 2020, both of those games are next-gen titles.
Yeah, exactly.
Cyberpunk could possibly be a cross-gen title. Depends on when that releases. So I have two big questions for you guys, but first I want to talk about the comparison real quick. So earlier this year, we had the leak, actually in January, about the supposed Xbox Lockhart, which is the traditional console, and the Anaconda, which is the big boy. And the big boy isn't... The big boy, so apparently the rumor is $500, and I'll get into the specs after I talk about Lockhart. So Lockhart, $250. I'm comparing this to the PS5, and this is all rumored. Obviously, the PS5 are actual details. This is all rumor. So this traditional console $250 is supposed to pack an 8-core CPU, just like the PS5, 4 teraflop GPU. That one is tough to compare because we don't know the teraflops in the PS5 GPU. 12 gigs of RAM. Also, we don't know how much RAM is in the PS5. And 1 terabyte SSD. So that means that that's also going to have an SSD. We're assuming... He didn't say how big the SSD was going to be, right? But we're assuming 1 terabyte?
Yeah.
I would assume it can't be less than that. I really...
It won't be less than that. But
yeah.
I'd like it to be even bigger.
Especially if Xbox is willing to put this out at $250 with 1 terabyte, you're like, well, maybe that means that the bigger boys for both PS5 and Xbox could be beefier. And the other thing is that it'll have DirectX ray tracing support, obviously just like the PS5. So those two consoles are very similar. Obviously, the PS5 in general is more powerful, we'd assume. Obviously, we don't have all the details. And then the Anaconda, which is the beefier model, it moves up from a 4 teraflop GPU to a 12 teraflop. For reference, the PS5, people are speculating it's going to be anywhere between 6 and 8. They're saying probably closer to 8. Who knows? Like we said, we don't have any official numbers on that. And it's going to have 16 gigabytes of RAM as opposed to the 250's 12 gigabytes of RAM. I just thought it's interesting to compare those because... like I was telling you guys before the podcast, if the Lockhart comes in at $250, which is a crazy price for a new console, and that's one part of this I really don't believe, and it's similar to the PS5 in terms of power, in terms of the stuff it supports for developers. Obviously, it won't be as powerful as the PS5, and they have that at such a low entry point, and then they have the Anaconda at $500. It's going to be interesting to see how these two platforms handle launch and how successful they are, because what I'm going to get to now, with the SSD being in the PS5 and the ray tracing, what's the price going to be? People assume it's going to be an expensive beef boy with the PS5. People are assuming expect 500, hope for 400, right? Like 400 is probably the cheapest we can expect for the PS4. PS5, sorry. It's the pricing variation, the fact that Xbox might have a direct competitor with the PS5 and a cheaper version that's just like, from what we know, Xbox's powerful console will be more powerful than the PS5, and their lower end console will be a little bit weaker than the PS5. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, right? Because It's not directly.
They're just in different positions, right? I don't
Yeah.
think there'll be too much parity. I think it'll be similar to what we saw with Pro and X, where like you can tell like it seems like the two companies followed like had the same costs and everything. It's like the Pro came out at 400, X came out at 500 with a good step more powerful, right? And that's because they're both buying all their shit from AMD, and they're both buying their memory from someone else, and they're both buying their hard drives from someone else. So it's like there's not going to be too much parity in how much they're able to drive the price down versus what is in it, just because all the parts come from other places. So, I mean, you'll see differences in power, but I think the prices will kind of line up more. Unless someone decides they want to take a huge loss and sell these things at a loss. Then it's,
My one point to that is, like, when next gen comes around, if there's two $500 consoles and then one $250, $300 one, it's a lot easier for people to get into next gen with that cheaper of a model. So I'm interested to see how that plays out,
Mm-hmm.
because Xbox will have these two SKUs and different entry points for different people, because not everyone really cares about the most powerful console. They just want to be able to have the console that can play the games that are coming out next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm more curious about. I agree with you. They're not going to be I think the Xbox will be more powerful than the PS5, but it won't be drastically different. It's the cheaper one that is going to be the head scratcher in terms of how it performs in comparison to those two, because the two beefier ones, they're stronger, but they're just like any other console launch we've seen, right? They kind of come out at the same kind of specs relatively. There's never been a cheaper version of one of those two at launch as well. That's usually a mid-generation refresh.
I'd say I'm like 100%. I would almost guarantee like there's not going to be two new Xbox 2 SKUs or whatever. Like I just don't see that happening. I think your lower end SKU is going to be your streaming only box or whatever, your $100 Roku style Xbox thing. I just don't see them launching, especially with two different SKUs like they have now with One and One X. That seems crazy.
I don't know if it's that crazy though. I
mean, has that ever happened?
No, but to quote you, Dom, nothing's happened until it happens.
Until it happens. Yeah.
Hey, baby. We fucking you.
Wii U had two SKUs at launch?
Yeah, with different storages or something, right? They weren't different.
Dude, it was weird.
You're technically right, but that's not what I meant.
You got black one. You got like a 10% discount on the store and shit.
Yeah. You are right.
Yeah, usually I would say at launch, Dom, if there was a difference, it would be in storage.
Right.
Because I think there were multiple PS3s, right? With different storage.
Yeah, I think
they're all the same fat PS3, but it's like a 20 or 60 or 100 gig.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I think his point though is just like a drastically different system. Because like to your point, Jordan, it's like, yeah, I'm paying more for more memory. I'm not paying less or paying more for an entirely different standard of performance and hardware.
Sure.
The other reason I think that is because we also had something unique lately, which was the X and the Pro. So you still will have the X out there trying to sell that, and that might be what becomes your lower end SKU, right?
Yeah, that's obviously all of these are rumors. There's the rumor that they're launching with two SKUs. There's the rumor that one of them might be streaming. There's the rumor that it's actually a traditional console. We don't know. The cool thing is the PlayStation 5 stuff is confirmed with all of the stuff Mark Cerny said. The Xbox stuff is still up in the air until E3. I just thought it was an interesting conversation in terms of the insides of these consoles. The one thing I want to talk about really quick before we close out is, people are wondering why they announced this information this way and what does it mean for the full reveal event. In terms of them, earlier we talked about how they accelerated the deployment of the dev kits. Obviously, the more dev kits you have out there, the more probability you have of information leaking about the dev kits.
Sure.
So somebody made a funny joke on Twitter that they wanted to reveal this information before Jason Schreier did on Kotaku. Yeah. So it makes sense. For my personal opinion, that this is based in some stuff, but obviously take it with a grain of salt, is I think this means that we're definitely not hearing about the PS5 again this year. I just think that they wanted to get their information out before the big Xbox event and all that stuff. And because here's the thing, if Xbox at E3 announces a beef boy that's more powerful, that's more powerful than the PS5, right? And they announced that at E3, and then afterwards we hear the specs about the PS5 and it's weaker than the Xbox. That's a bad wave of news for PlayStation, right? But if they get this information out before and then Xbox comes out and says they have a more powerful console, I don't think it's as strong of a hit because that conversation will happen at E3 and it'll die out months afterwards. Whereas if Xbox goes first and then PlayStation does, we don't know when PlayStation will make that announcement. You know what I mean? I think it's a smarter move. They probably assume that their console might be slightly weaker than Xbox's, so I think they want to just get out of the way and get that information out first. I think it's smart.
It's like when they were going to talk about PS4 Pro at E3, so Andy House did an interview with like International Business Times or whatever the day before E3, just talking about the PS4 Pro, just like Mark Cerny was talking about PS5.
Yeah. I don't think PS5, the reveal of it happens this year. Just real quick, what do you guys think? You think it happens this year? Like the full reveal with the...
Because,
I mean, like,
what you sacrifice... Because what you sacrifice when you start talking about your next thing, right, is sales on your current thing.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think they kind of probably said what they said kind of as trying to position themselves how they want against Xbox and whatever they're about to say. And I don't know that any of that matters too much personally, but there's probably some deep strategy there where they thought it was smart. But yeah, I doubt they say too much more because then you start selling less PS4s as a result of it, and like I don't know, especially when it's not coming out this year for sure.
Well, especially with them not being at E3, I think that's a big thing too. Of like, if we're not going to be at E3, when are we going to talk about this stuff? You know.
I mean, I know what you mean when you say full reveal, Jared, but I was surprised at how much of a reveal this was.
Yeah, valid.
I thought that they were going to dick around and just be like, yeah, it plays PlayStation games and there's an X button and a triangle button. Like, I was surprised at how much they did reveal and how much we know at this point. I mean, we've got a really solid idea of what we're going to be looking at with PlayStation 5, and then the rest is going to be like... not all bells and whistles. There's still more important stuff to iron out the details on, but a lot of it will be bells and whistles. At this point.
The only thing they gave us a little bit of faith back in them, because I mean we've been shitting on them for a while, like they don't want crossplay. You know, they're not gamers first. Not to say that I'm not ready to say they fully are anyway, but at least them saying like, yeah, it's going to be backwards compatible, and PSVR units are going to be forwards compatible with this thing too. Like that gives a little bit of faith that okay, they are at least doing some things that are more consumer friendly that they might not have done in the past, right?
Yeah,
this is the first like mildly positive conversation I've had about PlayStation in months at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Almost a year, so.
Yeah.
That means it worked, right? The only two bits of information we didn't have specifically that I wish we had is the amount of RAM. We don't know that, and how big the SSD is. Those aren't like super important. I just like those have been like sprinkling on the information they gave us, but.
Yeah, and the thing about SSDs is, if they are like making a badass one, which it sounds like they're doing, like that is going to be expensive. So we're probably going to get. Oh, that's a weird thing. We're probably going to get like no more than a terabyte, right? And usually in PlayStation, PS3, PS4, you can upgrade your hard drive really easily. So could you upgrade to a non-SSD, a disc-based laptop drive?
I doubt it.
Just like sacrifice load times?
Knowing Sony, probably not.
Because they require different amounts of power drain, and there's just different things to consider when you go in that direction. I would doubt it.
I totally agree. I'm just thinking it's weird that we don't know how you're going to be able to upgrade your hard drive in PS4.
Hey man, it might be a proprietary SSD that you can only buy variants from Sony, like the Vita memory cards.
God,
don't rule it out.
That's the thing is like
with that we're going to close the show
that up with their home consoles. So we knew how we were going to upgrade our hard drives walking from PS3 into PS4, and we don't. So that's just interesting to me.
Yeah, it's a good point. I didn't think about that. That's it for this week's show in terms of what we're going to be playing. Katana Zero for me. I want to get past this boss. This is the next boss you're going to face, Dom. Not chronologically. What I meant to say, this isn't the next boss you're going to face. This is the next boss you're going to face that's going to be as annoying as Genichiro that I'm currently on. It's a doozy. It's a really cool, compelling boss fight. It's just frustrating in a good way. Katana Zero. What was the other thing? Reigns Game of Thrones. I'm gonna hop back in that. There's. Nice. I don't know if I mentioned. I said you unlock characters. There's 9 total. So I don't know who the last 4 are. I can make assumptions, but I'm interested to see who they are. It's pretty much it for me. Game of Thrones, obviously. We all of us, or I don't know if Tom's going, but Jordan and I will have seen Avengers Endgame by the time we record next week because we're recording a day later.
I forgot. Can we just talk spoilers, Dom? Do we have to wait for you?
Yeah, I don't give a fuck. To be honest, I consider looking up those leaks.
Jesus fucking Christ, you're disgusting. You disgust me.
I mean, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but
I know.
You real quick.
Cheaper than going to see it.
You were going to see Avengers at what time?
6 o'clock
for you. 6 o'clock, which would be like 8 o'clock for me.
Yeah.
Which is still like you'll be probably kind of getting done with your showing as I'm entering mine. So as soon as I'm done, we'll be able to talk about that shit.
Hell yeah. I can't wait. I've been dodging those spoilers. Dom, are awful. I'm trying to avoid them as much as I can. I hope the same thing happens for Star Wars Episode 9, Dom. So you can see how it feels.
Oh my goodness.
I'll just stay away from everything.
Yeah.
Hardcore spite right there.
That sounded very volatile. I didn't mean for it to come off that way.
Hardcore
it probably will
spite.
happen.
Yeah,
Spitting venom Jared over here.
That's pretty much it for me. Dom, what are you going to be doing? Sekiro? Jordan, you going to play pre-sequel or are you going to be reading that Thief trilogy?
The Night Angel trilogy.
I couldn't remember the name, but I knew it was about thieves and like assassins and stuff.
So it's The Way of Shadows, Shadow's Edge, and Beyond the Shadows.
Ooh. It's funny because Shadows Die Twice seems like it could fit in that.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I might read some more Way of Shadows. I'll certainly be reading more comic books, magazines, and then I'll definitely be hopping back into video games because we've got Katana Zero, like I said, preloaded, ready to go. I thought that I was going to be able to play it, at 11 p.m. tonight. Little did I know, I'd been wasting time already. So as soon as we get done here, I'm breaking out that speech and...
Real quick, apparently people couldn't even play it at midnight last night because of all of the server issues and stuff tied with the Smash update in 3.0.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Wow. So, get it together, Nintendo. But yeah, definitely some Katana Zero, and might be meddling around with some of the other games I've been fucking with recently.
5 episodes left. It's going to be heartbreaking.
Game of Thrones Season 2, baby.
That's it for the show. If you can, please follow us.
Season 2, Episode 2. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think people. Yeah, I thought you said Season 2. I was like, maybe I misheard him. If you can,
Clash of Kings time. Here we go.
Yeah, boy. If you can, please follow us on iTunes. Leave us a review. The more reviews we have, the higher up we move in the algorithm, so people can see our podcast. So it definitely helps, especially with the amount of podcasts that are out there. Everybody has a podcast. I mean, we do. Yeah, if you can follow us there. Leave a review. I don't even think you need to really type anything out. I think people get worried when you are asked to leave a review that you have to type out some novel. I think just you can rate it, which is good enough. YouTube, search Controlled Interests will pop up. Subscribe there. Hit the bell notification to know when we upload new videos. Like the videos too. That definitely helps as well. On Twitter, you can follow us at CTRLINT. That's Controlled Interests abbreviated. Tweeting out all of our videos and such. You can follow Dom at Dom's Oreos. You can follow Jordan at Mellow Modus. And you can follow me at Jared_. We'll catch you guys next week when we're talking about more Sekiro and Endgame. We'll be tiptoeing around them spoilers. Catch you guys next time.